regular public schools before taking her retirement and devoting her time as a mom and educational advocate. Pat served as president of the Education Foundation in Indian River County, Florida, and she envisions a public school system in America that is reflective of the principles of freedom granted by our Creator. Besides that, Pat is the National Chapter Chair Coordinator for Moms for Liberty. Moms for Liberty is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, grassroots organization. Moms for Liberty is devoted to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents for the of America. Oh, survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mom for Liberty's very own Pat Blackburn.
Hi, thank you so much. I can't believe it. You guys are here to liberate education. I'm just so grateful that we're at this place in the history of the United States where people are awake to what is going on in public schools. Um, I am I'm the chapter chair coordinator for Moms for Liberty, and we'll talk a little bit more about our organization later. But today I want to talk to you about mass exodus and how we cannot let that mortgage the future of America. Sorry, my screen share just stopped, so I'm going to try that again. So today we're going to talk a little bit about my experience. As a teacher, I started, my first job was in a charter school in North Carolina. I don't know if you can tell by the way I talk. I have that North Carolina dialect, and it's not going anywhere. And my first job outside of college was a charter school. So I have a lot of experience being a teacher at a school of choice. Then also I want to talk to you about some pitfalls to avoid when you're choosing an alternative education for your child. And then finally, I want us to think about the future of America. Okay, so long time ago, I'm going to date myself now, back in 1998, I graduated from Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina. I started looking for my first job as a teacher and landed a job at a charter school that served 3 counties in North Carolina. This was at the beginning of the charter school movement. North Carolina allowed at the time only 100 charter schools. And the school that I was at served Surry, Wilkes, and Yadkin County. The interesting part about teaching at a charter school was we tended to get children that, for whatever reason, the public school experience did not work out for them. And usually it meant that the child didn't learn typically. So quickly I found myself teaching children with various learning disabilities. And I ended up sending myself back to college for a learning disabilities certificate because I just didn't feel like I was equipped in college to teach the many needs that I had. But here's something I want to tell you. College doesn't really equip teachers to teach. The experience, I think, in a charter school is what gave me the tools that I needed in my toolbox. The beautiful thing about a charter school is you don't just wear one hat, but that's also probably a detriment to it. When I was working at the charter school, I was the kindergarten first grade teacher, but that also meant when my kindergarten and first graders went down for nap or rest time, then I was also teaching algebra to the 8th grade advanced students. I was the basketball coach, the cheerleading coach. I drove a bus. You name it, I did it. And I was young at the time, so, I had a lot of energy. But I learned so much from that experience, wearing all those different hats. The thing that I loved the best about it was the freedom that I had as a teacher in a charter school. We had to teach the North Carolina standard course of study. We were given the standard course of study, but then I was able to pretty much have autonomy as to what the curriculum was that we use for my students. So I was able to use what worked best for my classroom. Also, another thing, if I had a child who needed a certain program, like I had one student who really needed a program called Touch Math, I was able to go and request that for him. And so there's a special kind of freedom for me as a teacher doing that. When I left the charter school after 9 years and went to teach in a regular public school, I quickly realized that the teachers do not have as much autonomy, and it was difficult. And to see that teachers, I mean, they would actually ask that the teachers be, every teacher in kindergarten was teaching the same thing. Well, what if your class didn't, what if you needed some remediation on something? Well, no, you got to move on. So I think the freedom in the school of choice, in the charter school that I was in, really, really, it helped me meet the needs of my students. It's also, if you have a lot of freedom, it means you have to be a self-starter and you have to be dedicated to your children. But for the most part, I don't think people really get into teaching because they don't care about students. The problem is, once you get there, sometimes the handcuffs go on and you just have to get through the day. I come from a family of teachers. My sister is a teacher in a public school here in North Carolina. And the stories she tells me, I wouldn't go back to teaching in a public school. Even though I love public schools, and it is my hope that public schools can be reformed, I currently would not go back to teaching in a public school. But the most valuable lesson I learned as a teacher in a charter school is when you teach at a charter school, then your parents have a choice. And if something's not going well, they can take their children and go elsewhere. And so parents became the customers. And I found out real quickly that if I engaged parents, if I made parents a partner in helping the student learn, then my path was so much easier. And I think that teachers today are really missing an opportunity when they don't reach out to parents. And I'm saying even parents, unlike if there's parents on here tonight and you're considering an alternative school, I'm sure, or even homeschooling, I'm sure that you have all the tools in your toolbox to do that. But typically, I taught a lot of students from at-risk families, and they didn't always have the tools in their toolbox. I still would reach out to them. I would say, hey, we're having this issue at school. I bet you're having this issue at home. Let's work together. We'll make both of our lives easier. And for the most part, that relationship that I built with my families really made 100% of the difference in helping children, even at risk, learn. And so when we look at education today and we look at almost a majority of children not being where they should be, I think the missing element is engaging parents in that process. Okay, so pitfalls. Well, let's talk about private school. So I pulled my son from the regular public school when he was in fifth grade. Well, after fifth grade, I noticed when I was going in for my parent-teacher conferences, maybe you've noticed this, that the teacher would say, oh, your child's doing fine. And then when I would ask to see the data and the evidence of my child's work, I was seeing that, he was fine, but he could improve. And when I would push the teacher to tell me how she was going to get him from fine to his fullest potential, there was no answer for that. And not that it was the teacher's fault. She had a lot of things on her plate. There was a lot of behaviors. My child wasn't a behavior problem. There were children who had a lot of special needs. My son didn't. But he wasn't the squeaky wheel in the classroom. And I just really believed that he needed to be in a different environment where he could be challenged and where he could reach his fullest potential. And so we made a difficult decision to leave public school, even though I was a public school educator. While he was in public school, I was the PTA president of the public school there for 2 years. I was really invested in the school. I loved the teachers, but I just really believed that it wasn't the best place for my son. And so we started to look at other schools, and we did choose a private school, and it was a sticker shock. So one of the first pitfalls I want you to think about is if you choose private school, I want you to look very closely at the curriculum in that private school. We are noticing a lot of our private schools are accredited through the same accreditation organizations. Now, what does that mean? That means they're all going to have some similarities. So I want you to do your research if you're choosing a private school for your child as to what the curriculums are and the culture of that school. I want to tell you a story about a charter school in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's called Charlotte Latin. It's one of the most prestigious, expensive private schools in Charlotte, North Carolina. And there was about 60 parents who had become really concerned about a sudden shift in the education at that school. They were seeing a lot of age inappropriate material, some of it sexual. They were concerned that there was no transparency within the curriculum. And so 60 of those parents went to the board and asked to have a meeting with the board of directors. After that meeting, one of the parents, his name is Doug Turpin, his children were removed from that school. They were told that his 11-year-old son and his 13-year-old daughter was told to go clean out their lockers and immediately leave the school. This is a school that they had been to since pre-K, and they were expelled for no wrongdoing. And so I want you to think about what it looks like when you're thinking about choosing a private school for your children. Really do your research. Talk to parents. Find out the good, the bad, and the ugly about the school. And talk to the administrators. Because the hardest thing once you put a child into a school is then to have to hold them accountable. And in a private school, your accountability is to leave. That's how you hold them accountable. You pull your child out. Well, that's a difficult decision, especially if you've already pulled them out of public school. So, I want you guys to think about that pitfall when you're looking at private schools, because sometimes they can be just as woke or even more so than your public school. And then I want you to avoid the public school comparative. When we first moved our son to a private school, we noticed there were a lot of things different about that school. The way they taught their classes was different. The classes looked different. They didn't take the same tests. That's probably a plus. It was a plus for me. But there was a lot of things that looked different from the public school that he went to, and it was all for the better. Also, if you're thinking about homeschooling, don't think you have to make your house look like a classroom. Even your kitchen can be a classroom. So avoid the public school comparative. Don't compare it to the public school experience. There are a lot of great things about different ways to educate children, and it's not always sitting in a neat row of desks. Finally, I want you to avoid the affordability trap. The misnomer that certain parents don't have the choice to choose alternative to education is one that I think we put that on ourselves. We'll say, well, I don't have the money to pay for curriculum, or I don't have the money to send them to private school, or, we both work. If there's a will, there's a way. And in many states, you have grants, even funded by taxpayer dollars, where you can get grants, especially if your child, I know in the state of Florida, they have grants where if your child's been bullied and you have to pull them, that the state will pay for their tuition. But look for grants, and also get with a co-op. I know that one of our speakers will be with classical conversations, I think, later in the program. But try to consider, if you want to consider homeschool, try to consider a co-op. And once you get in with a community of parent educators, you can share materials, and it can be a whole lot less expensive than you think. So don't immediately discount the don't immediately discount being able to choose an alternative for your child, or to even homeschool them over money. Where there's a will, there's usually a way. Okay, so now we get to the nitty gritty of my presentation. I pulled my child from public school, and I still love public school. I still truly believe that we must reform public education in the United States of America. If we don't, where will our future be? I was looking at the latest statistics, and still 80 to 90% of students in the United States of America are educated or maybe indoctrinated in the public school system. So I want you to save your children now, if you must, but I want you to save their later too. And I say that because I fully realize that once my son graduates from high school and goes on to a job or to college, that he's going to have to live in a society where the majority of his peers were educated in our public school system. Now, I want you to think about what that means for your child and your child raising your grandchildren. We've seen the changes in the United States of America in the last few years, and we are shocked by them. Now imagine what it's going to be like when the majority of the United States of America has been indoctrinated into Marxism, CRT, SEL. What does that look like for your child's future? What does it look like for your grandchildren's future? So my call to action today is, if you're considering on liberating your children, think about liberating their future, because you can save them now, but what's going to happen? I'm sorry, I just got to get my screen back. What's going to happen once they graduate? What's it going to look like? Well, I'm coming to you today with one alternative, something you can do. And when I talk to you about Moms for Liberty, I want you to think about, what will you do to save the future of America for your child? I don't know about you, but I will bleed for my child. I would die for my child. And so it's not too much to ask for me to take part in a parental rights organization whose focus is solely education and saving America. So here you see Moms for Liberty, who we are. We are moms, dads, grandparents, community members. You don't even have to be just a mom. We actually have several chapters who have dads as chapter chairs. And our desire is to promote liberty and stand up for parental rights at all levels of government. You see in the picture is Tiffany Justice and Tina Deskovich. They're our co-founders. And the story of Tina and Tiffany is that they were both school board members in the state of Florida, and they were both parents. And they got to see behind the education curtain. And what they saw was very scary. And I will tell you that as a teacher and as a parent and as Tiffany's friend who was with her through her school board journey, I was so concerned about what we were seeing. In Indian River County, Florida, where we were living at the time, where I was living at the time, we back in, I think might have been 2018, there was actually a teacher training proposed from the Southern Poverty Law Center, who was going to come give free training to our teachers, called Social Justice 101. And everybody thought that was fantastic. And I lost my mind. Because what would be fantastic about Southern Poverty Law Center, who says if you're a Christian or you believe in the family unit, that you're part of a hate group? How can that be great to be training our teachers? And so I tried to get the community up in arms about it. I called people. I was like, we got to put a stop to this. And I had some people who understood, but I really thought we would have a massive amount of people at the school board meeting saying no way. But people were asleep back in 2018. No more. And I would tell you that I have the greatest respect for all the parents who are standing up now and who are awake now. And as difficult as it may seem to you, if you're one of those parents who are out there fighting for your children, and as frustrating as I know it is because I talk to you every day, I have most hope than I've ever had before that we can fix education in America. And it starts by getting off the comfy couch, as I like to call it. Moms for Liberty was launched in January of 2021. Tiffany and Tina were done with their 4 years on the school board, and they decided, what are we going to do with all this knowledge? They were seeing parents were concerned. Parents were coming out to school board meetings, and they said, we need to empower parents. So they started Moms for Liberty. In a year's time, you can see how the growth of the organization just exploded. Moms for Liberty was originally supposed to be just in Florida, but soon we had people from all over the United States saying, oh my gosh, we need help. We need it here in New York, in California, all over the United States. And so Moms for Liberty went national. And you can see that in 1 year, we grew to 70,000 members. We already started winning school board seats. And so we continue today. And today we have 185 chapters in 35 states and around 85,000 parents and community members as members of our organization. But we have huge goals and we have a long way to go. Because if you haven't counted yet, there are 3,130 counties in the United States of America. And what we hope to do is to launch a Moms for Liberty chapter in every county in the United States. So what do? We have once a month meetings. We deep dive into the curriculum. We do our research. We speak at school board meetings. We organize statewide to support parental rights legislation. We work with our friendly teachers, and we try to find liberty-minded candidates to run for school board. Now, I want you to join a chapter. And if you don't have a chapter in your community, I would like you to start a chapter. And all you need is 10 people, and you need 2 people to help you lead, and we'll help you get started. The time commitment's about 10 hours a week. So I'm going to ask you this. What would you do to save the future of America for your children and grandchildren? Can you get off the couch? Maybe you join a Moms for Liberty chapter. It's more than making a complaint on Facebook. Get out of the house. Go to a school board meeting. Join your fellow parents working to save America. If you want more information, you can go on your cell phone right now and text Liberty to 53445. And you'll get a response that will take you to our website. You can learn all about Moms for Liberty, and you can learn how to start a chapter in your area. So that's all I have. And so do we have any questions?
I saw one. We have a Canadian on our session. Where was it? They asked about starting chapters in the U.S. Can it only be done in the U.S.? Should I just look for some other group that's similar in Canada?
Yes, we are only in the U.S. I will say Canada, we have a podcast called the Joyful Warrior Podcast. So wherever you get your podcast, you can look for the Joyful Warrior Podcast. We actually interviewed a Canadian dad who's the billboard guy in Canada. But yeah, absolutely listen to our podcast. But right now we are only in the United States of America. So definitely find your liberty-minded parents in Canada.
There was a question from Lauren May. She said, for those of us whose children do not attend public school, but we do want public schools to be better, how can we help? I've joined Moms for Liberty, but have not been able to find the right spot because it feels like a lot of things focus on public schools.
Yeah, it does. It does focus on public schools, and we actually have homeschool moms who are chapter chairs of Moms for Liberty. I don't know what that's right. I don't know what chapter you're in, but homeschool moms can absolutely speak at school board meetings about what's going on at the public schools. Any community member can speak at a school board meeting because a strong school affects the whole community. Also, what our chapters need, they need people helping them do research. They need people helping them look into the curriculum. So reach out to your chapter chair, tell them you want to help. It may be that you have a talent for something that they can use. I know many of our chapters are, summer's coming. We partnered with a new website called Education Consumers, and our chapters will be doing a deep dive into their data. Maybe you're good at that. Maybe you're good at numbers. Maybe you can help them do public records requests. Maybe you can do research of curriculum that's coming. Maybe you can pull school board agendas and email school board members and help to understand what's on the school board. There's a lot that needs to be done. There's a lot of work to be done. So reach out to your chapter chair and ask them how you can help. Find out when their meetings are, attend their meetings, and just keep coming out, keep getting out. And you know what? I always say get off the comfy couch, but you can also always do a lot from your comfy couch. You can email your school board members, look for those calls to action. If you're not joined your local Moms for Liberty social media, a lot of them, they all have Facebook groups, but some of them also have other social media. So look for those calls to action.
That's awesome, Pat. Yeah, I can speak to that too. Like I've homeschooled my 5 kids all the way through, and last year in May helped start our county chapter here. And a lot of people ask me the same question, like, "Will you homeschool? Why does it matter?" And all of what Pat said is, the kids that are growing up with my kids are going to be the ones leading the world one day, and I want to be involved. So, um, yeah, this was amazing, Pat. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Does
Thank you.
anybody else have more questions? We've got a few more minutes. Yeah, Pat, this was awesome. I
All right.
I
Well, I'll
really
just
appreciate you
say,
doing this.
I just really appreciate all the people who took the time out to be here today. Um, I I told you I was a PTA president. We got 1 minute left. The way I met co-founder Tiffany Justice was we worked together as parents with our PTA to get our school fixed. So I feel like we did Moms for Liberty before the parent movement was a thing because our school was falling apart. Our kids were sick, and we started going to the school board meetings and asking them to fix it. And we arranged tours of the school with their school board. We learned how to work with them. We learned to read the budget and figure out where the money was to fix our school. So I feel like we kind of had that experience. And we say all the time at Moms for Liberty, for such a time as this, God's prepared you. So whatever your experience is, whatever your talents are, come join the movement. All hands on deck. It's very important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I wish we had a whole group clapping for you, but this was amazing, Pat.
I'll clap for myself.
Yeah.
Jazz is.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you again. For those of y'all still with us, there's a poll. If y'all could fill that out before you leave, that just gives us some feedback on our session. And again, these have been recorded, and you have access to them until the end of August. So thanks again, you guys.
All right. Thank you.